Phil's first wife was a wonderful woman named Ginger. Both of them together explored a lot of spirituality, and at one of their meditation groups, the book Man of Miracles was handed around. And Ginger read it and read about all the miracles, and she gave a book report to you. What did she say about it?
She said, when I go to India, I'll check him out.
Phil gets home from school that weekend, and she says, "We're going to India. We're going to meet Sri Sathya Sai Baba."
Sairam, dear listeners, welcome to Sai SOUL 100. Our guests today are Brother Phil Shambaugh and Sister Nadamayi Shanti from Boise, Idaho. They attend the Sri Sathya Sai Center of Capital Area online satsang. Brother Phil, Sister Nadamayi, thank you for joining Sai SOUL 100.
Thank you for having us.
Sairam, please share your story.
Well, this is really Phil's story, but I'm gonna take the lead on it just because sometimes it's a little difficult for Phil to remember the details, but we'll tell it together. So Phil
Need it back.
Phil's first wife was a wonderful woman named Ginger, and they met and were together, and both of them together explored a lot of spirituality, and they were members of a meditation group. And they explored a lot of esoteric things and phenomenology, all those kinds of things. And they had both together come to the conclusion that that wasn't the way, finding phenomenology, materializations, and they both had spiritual gifts in those areas, but they knew that it wasn't helping them develop in the way they wanted to. And at one of their meditation groups, the book Man of Miracles was handed around. And Ginger read it. Phil didn't read it. He wasn't too interested. And Ginger read it and read about all the miracles, and she gave a book report to you. What did she say about it?
She said, is that when she said, well, when I go to India, I'll check him out.
Yeah.
Because she'd always wanted to go to India for as long as I knew her. That was just and I'm not sure why that bug had been in her ear, but
now remember that she'd already seen a lot of amazing stuff. So miracles to her, she'd already understood for her own path.
Yeah,
they weren't going to help her grow spiritually the way she wanted. So she's like, okay. Then we fast forward a few years. Phil had decided to return to school. He was successful in his career at the Department of Energy in Washington, D.C., and as a computer engineer, a software engineer, but he was more interested in healing work. So he decided to go back to school and become a chiropractor. So he is commuting from Washington, D.C., every weekend up to New York to go upstate New York to go to school. Crazy. And Ginger is left home alone in Washington, D.C. in the 80s, which had a terrible crime rate. It was a very dangerous city. So what would she do?
She used to lock herself in her bedroom at night with her cat. But the cat was for comfort.
And huddle there.
I just huddled in there.
Pray for dawn. Just terrified. But she fully supported him. So she was just doing her best. And one night, while she was there with the cat in the locked bedroom, Swami appeared before her. I can't tell the story without crying. Places his hands. I know. Places his hands on her head and says,
"This is a special blessing from Sathya Sai Baba."
And removed her fear.
Yeah.
Removed her fear.
All her fears.
All her fears from that day forward.
From that day forward, yeah. So after that, no locked door, no huddled under the covers with a cat, just
peace.
Able to be.
Yeah, able to be. And so Phil gets home from school that weekend, and she says, we're going to India, we're going to meet Sri Sati Sai Baba. We're going there. And he said, okay.
I used to fly back and forth from Washington to
Upstate New
upstate
York.
New York
Yeah.
and accumulated enough frequent flyer points, just enough so that we had 2 round fare tickets to India. So we said, it's another sign.
So as soon as he graduated, December 87, they were in Puttaparthi, January 1988.
Yep.
The first moment they could get there, and just had a wonderful, wonderful time. And meanwhile, back in the States, they both became very involved in the local Sai community. There was the Bethesda Sai Center where they became acquainted with many, many devotees and had just so many beautiful opportunities. So Phil and Ginger were never able to have children of their own, and Ginger was sad, but then she understood. Swami helped her to understand that that wasn't her job, and that her job was, she said, she would be
The universal mother. You know, the mother's main job is to feed and nurture the children, right?
so she
So
did.
that's what she did. She knew that food was, that was how you grew and became healthy and so on. And so
Ginger had gone back to school and become, she got her PhD in nutrition. And this was in the 80s when all the food had definitely become chemical agriculture, and everybody believed it was the same as non-chemical agriculture.
yeah, organic food was just thought to be, oh, that's just weird stuff that hippies eat, and there's no real difference between them. It's just that because, you know, they liked being different.
But
And
Swami,
so she knew in
Swami
her
had
body
Ginger.
that there was difference.
He gave her the gift of a mind that was brilliant, and a spirituality and a connection to food and nature and to Divine Mother. And she, with Phil's full support, conducted research.
Yeah.
And they went and they did original research, going to fields in Pennsylvania, side by side, organic and non-organic
And Maryland,
fields.
we went.
And Maryland.
So in the District of Columbia, there's the neighboring states are you know, Maryland and Virginia. And so we researched, I went on the computer and found every farm that was producing organically grown crops that had a neighboring chemically grown crop. You know, just quote normal food.
So they were able to take side by side samples, and because of both of them had extensive training in labs and research, and they did all of the chemical analysis themselves. And one line of data took how many hours?
40 hours.
40 hours
of laboratory work.
One line of data.
And that was to isolate the actual chemicals, all the chemicals that existed in that sample of the foods.
And it was to determine the nutritional profile of those foods. And what her paper, very strong scientific work, conclusively demonstrated was that organic food was more nutritious and safer than non-organic food.
Less toxics, more nutritives.
And it was the first piece of research of that nature. Nobody else was even thinking in that direction at all, but Swami had Ginger do that work with Phil's, of course.
Well, she knew it in her body. Her body was her own lab, and she could feel the difference between, quote, normal good food, you know, which is chemically grown, and organically produced.
So that was a great contribution that Ginger, one of her great sevas. And but you know, again, also feeding God's children, you know, lots of work with the homeless, lots of work. She volunteered in La Clínica del Pueblo. She and Phil were just mom and dad at this clinic in DC for decades for homeless and immigrants, and they were beloved in this community for decades. She worked as a nutritionist, Phil worked as a chiropractor and healer for just so
Yeah.
long, and it overflowed into their home. Their home was just full of people all the time coming and
For
being,
treatments of one sort or another, yeah.
but unfortunately, all of that work in organic movement and everything, it was too late for Ginger and her health, because God had another plan for her, and she developed cancer. Again, she'd actually had it once, and they were able to put it into remission, but it came back in about 2000-ish, I think, is when it started coming back. And
But I wouldn't believe it.
Ginger, what you wouldn't believe was what
Yes,
Ginger knew.
Yeah,
And Ginger knew that it wasn't gonna be
yeah.
a victory this time in a certain way. She wasn't gonna beat it in her physical body.
I
She
wouldn't
knew,
believe it.
and he wouldn't believe it. So they went to the mainstream first, and then Phil said, I don't believe in that word. And so you went all over the world, did
All the alternative cancer treatment places in the world. And
and she humored you.
yeah.
She was completely at peace. She wasn't bothered.
Yeah, well, she knew where she was going.
Yeah.
She always knew that. And I just wasn't ready to let her go.
Yeah. And
Sorry.
so, yeah, well, it's okay, because, and so, she humored it. She went through all the treatments. She went through it all and became more and more serene, and her body became more and more and more debilitated.
Yeah,
And
her light, she was glowing.
the sicker she got, the more her light glowed. But the body was, let's not
Yeah,
minimize it. The body was in a great deal of pain,
yeah,
enormous pain, and Phil would do everything he could to make her comfortable. And one night, I remember this, one night she was really struggling, and he could hear her, and so he got up to go, see what he could do. And when he came back into the room, you smelled
I smelled her booty.
yeah.
And so I said, oh, Swami's taking care of this one.
And from that time on,
Yeah,
the pain didn't get the better of her again. She was able to sleep, get the rest that she needed to do the work that she needed from the big
Yeah.
karma she was moving.
yeah,
And so this was a point that I thought was so special about Ginger, was that she has taught me so many lessons, and one of them was to know the difference between pain and suffering, and that even though her body, it was going through enormous pain, she didn't suffer.
yeah.
She did not suffer. Her joy grew and grew and grew until, as Phil was saying already, that people came to offer comfort, because I said she was beloved in many communities.
Yeah.
And people came to comfort them, right? And what happened?
They came away enlightened in more ways than one. So she was giving them darshan, literally.
Swami was giving them darshan through Ginger.
To all those.
And just to demonstrate how clear that was, because you can say, okay, devotees come and they understand, they get it, right? And that, of course, is very special. And devotees have that blessing to have that insight. Would anybody else have that blessing who didn't know Swami and didn't understand that? And that's where we kind of have to tell a different story about Ginger's own mother. Ginger understood her calling was to be a universal mother. She knew that, but she didn't have a role model in this lifetime. What she had in this lifetime was an experience of being an unwanted child. She was an accidental pregnancy, and her mother, her biological mother in this life, resented her, actively resented her,
Because she
blamed her
had been engaged to a man that she loved, and for some reason,
and gotten in trouble with somebody else.
Somebody else.
and had
Yeah.
to be married to this other person and have this child she didn't want. And she blamed Ginger for ruining her life and had active enmity towards her whole life. And it's not, something that we always talk about, that sometimes we don't have parents who don't play that divine role model for us.
Yeah.
But Ginger did. And so, and she knew on the spiritual path that she had a duty to her biological mother.
Yeah.
And she said, it was hard.
It was hard.
It was hard. And she said that I can visit folks in the old people's home. And she said, what kind of sadhak am I?
If I can't visit my own mother and look at her as just one of the other lonely old women, and treat her the same way I would treat any one of them, with love.
With love. So where she was given enmity, where she was given hostility, she returned love. And it was hard, but she did over and over and over again for many, many, many years. And so as she was dying, and as Swami's light was shining through her more and more and more, her mother came to see her. And
For the very first time in her life,
her mother
mother said, I love you.
The first kind words, the first show of any affection. And to me, there's no other explanation than Swami's light, love was shining so much that it even touched someone who had been unable to experience that before.
Yeah.
And so I think for Ginger, that was also helpful too. It helped to finish.
Yeah.
Something that she knew needed completion.
Yeah, she wasn't going to come back again for that.
And when all these people were coming to see her, she couldn't move her body by herself. She couldn't even lift her own head by herself. She couldn't speak. Phil did everything for her. So the last day of Ginger's physical presence on Earth, Phil was with her, and he could see the light that you can see without physical eyes.
I could read auras and all that stuff.
And you were able to see Ginger's light move out of her body and move into Swami's light. And I guess that's when you figured out that Ginger was onto a greater victory than a physical recovery.
Yeah.
All of the karma that body
She had
working
mastered the human life.
she had mastered unconditional love.
And yeah. And she had
Okay.
the love all, serve all, she had managed to do
Mastered
that.
She saw Swami in everyone, even her mother, the
Yeah.
hardest person in the world for her to see it. And she saw Swami in her mom. She had no desires left. Everything was finished.
Yeah.
I think it's just so amazing that for you, Brother Phil, for you to be part of that journey with Ginger, and for you to witness this and to be able to narrate the pure love that she was experiencing. It's easy for us to say, we're not the body, we are the Atma, but when Ginger was truly living it and her body was totally out of use and she
Yeah.
was yet glowing.
Yeah.
And you can see the glow in her face, and she was glowing. And for you, Phil, to be able to witness her light merging with Swami, I don't know who is more blessed. Right? And then Sister Nadamayi, for you to be able to take all of that and to see the power in it, for you to have experienced it through Phil, and for you to be able to narrate the story in such a powerful manner is also absolutely a blessing. And Swami's there guiding us, all of us. And Sister Ginger, although she's not in her physical form, she is with Swami and she's guiding us as well.
That's true.
So, yeah.
So Sairam, Brother Phil,
Sairam.
Sairam, Sister Nadamayi, very grateful for the two of you and for sharing your beautiful, powerful, powerful story, which that many of us can take away, many messages as we go through our own journey as well.
Love is the answer.
Thank you for being with us for Sai Soul 100.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Sister Prabha.
Sairam, dear listeners, thank you for listening to Sai Soul 100 with Brother Phil and Sister Nadamayi. I am Prabha Swaminathan. Until next time, Jai Sairam.